If you do that, then it immediately engages the audience.
And I have no idea what the end game will be.
To launch a book, have your launch signing at the very place where the roots of the book are.
We are the Front Page Pass, brought to you by Word Journeys.
Welcome, everybody, to a special summer reading season edition of Front Page Pass. I'm Bob Yaling from Weir Journeys Literary Services, and alongside me is my sidekick and co-host of the show, Alexa Black. And today we have a special guest who's really not a guest because he's the man that makes this show happen.
Absolutely.
And that's our producer, Trevor Faith.
Hi.
We'll be speaking with him later.
Yes, we will. Yeah, because he's done some remarkable things already in our short little run so far.
And he helps us make the magic happen here. So
that's right. But first, sadly, we have some sad news to report. The writing community, and particularly the Southern California writing community, lost one of its greatest champions early this morning. Darlene Quinn was an editor, a writer, an author, and a mentor to so many of us, myself included. I've known Darlene for about 12 years, and she helped me so much when I was editing people's projects, but also just really wise woman on how to be a good writer and how to build a writing career. She's helped so many of us. I mean, many of the authors in San Diego and Los Angeles counties in the past 20 years have benefited from her example. A few people I can name off really quick are 10-time Amazon #1 best-selling children's book author Sherry Fink, editor extraordinaire Matthew Palomari, the publisher of Acorn Publishing, who published Chris Rydell's book Blood Money, yep. Holly Camier. We're all proteges of Darlene, and it was really sad news that we found out literally right before we went on the air. So our greatest condolences and sympathies to Darlene's family. Absolutely. And we've lost a giant. I mean,
and she left quite the legacy behind her.
And it's definitely upsetting. And but I just wanted to give a shout out to Darlene and just so grateful and appreciative for everything she's done, not only for writers all over Southern California and the nation, but for me specifically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so summer reading season is here, and that's exciting because unlike last year, we all get to be free and out in society now. So now we're going to get to, instead of reading our summer books at home or in our backyards, we're going to be getting to read them at the beach, at lakes, wherever we go to have summer fun in the park.
Yeah, the possibilities are endless at this point. So.
That's right. And it's going to be a watershed summer for summer reading because, book sales are already through the roof. Yeah. They're up double-digit percentage from last year at this time of the year. And so along with that, publishers are offering the most diverse and comprehensive collection of summer reading books in years.
Versatile, the list.
Yeah,
yes,
and of course, I'd be remiss being an author and an editor and a coach, writing coach and stuff, if I didn't have one going on too. So what I'm reading this summer is Ta-Nehisi Coates' The Water Dancer, which is an incredible award-winning book about a young boy whose mother is sold when he's very young, but she gifts him with these magical powers, and those powers save his life, and then he ends up becoming a slave. He's a slave, and then it turns out his natural father is a plantation owner, so he's mixed race, right. And then he moves from slave quarters up to the main plantation house. That sets the story in place, and then it's just this incredible journey to freedom, to utopian communities, and so forth. It's amazing. It's an amazing read, and in the spirit of the season, I cranked out the first pages of it while sitting, at a nearby lake the other day.
Yeah, exactly. So, I would say essentially a historical fiction with a ton of magical realism.
Yeah, exactly.
Elements to it,
Yeah, so it definitely has it's a serious book in a way, but it's also part of what makes summer reading so fun. We can dive into it. It's escapist in its own way.
Exactly.
And I've never heard of that combination before. Magical and historical in one.
Oh yeah. Well,
That's interesting.
Brandon Pilcher's book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They call
Yeah.
it
True.
Lost
True.
Colony.
History,
True.
Yeah, magical
That's a good
realism.
point.
Yeah, magical realism can be used both in current day books, but
Right.
also in a lot of historical stuff. Because
True.
I remember I edited a book by Laurel Hill a couple of years ago in California. That was about the late 19th century in California, where some magical realism was involved. So,
I understand.
anyways, yeah.
Apologize
And
for the cell phone interruption. Also.
Yes.
we're busy here. But right behind the summer reading is a lot. There's going to be a lot of summer live readings. For instance, I know in Hollywood in 3 weeks there's going to be the Beach Book Fest, which I was a part of for its first 2 seasons. And
Really?
and I believe that I think they've got about 15 authors, some of them best-selling authors, lined up, and it's really cool because it's a large tea house called Tea Pop in North Hollywood. And it's in the back area. There's room for about 100 people, and you just get up and read, and it's just awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Nice.
guess what? The whole summer is going to be that way in book world, just like it is
Nice.
in regular society. Yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't illustrate how much society's been just itching to open up, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It does, so.
Yeah, and then of course along comes with that. It's the book festivals and conferences are coming
I was going
back.
to bring that up, yes, because I've talked about that quite a few times. There's going to be quite a bit in store for Word Journeys as far as just us traveling and, you know, doing a podcast from
Yeah.
there and everything else. So,
And
there's
we-
a lot of opportunities.
And we've mentioned either a live show or possibly a vlog that will come out of those amazing conferences like as well. And either or is going to be awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
So keep up with us.
That's right. So what I'd like to do before I turn it over to Alexa is kind of give everybody this is the Chicago Tribune's list of some of the best summer reads to look forward to. Now, some of these books have been published already. Others are coming out now. But I'll just give you a few examples. The Man Who Ate Too Much, The Life of James Beard, the great TV chef. The best poetry title for the summer right now is Black Girl Call Home by Jasmine Mans. The autobiography they're touting, which is no surprise, is Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey.
Yes, of course.
It's an incredible book, and in this
read
book,
that one.
you know, a lot of times when actors and celebrities write about their lives, they kind of gloss over some of the dark stuff, and then they focus on either their careers or what have you. He starts off with page 1, the way from his upbringing.
Yes, that's what I had read.
Yeah. A few of the other books on Juneteenth by Annette Gordon-Reed, Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro, The Guest List by Lucy Foley, The Girl with the Louding Voice by Abidare, Dragon Hoops by Jean Luang Yang, which is a great graphic novel. I've seen that before. And then the best children's book that's being touted, The Wonderful Things You Will Be by Emily Winfield Martin. And I just say that, you know, it's always important with children's books because, you know, the children's summer reading programs are getting ready to start up in the libraries. And parents, you know, I just read something the other day, I was just sharing before the show, where studies have been done where if parents read 1 book a day to their kids from ages 2 to 5, when that kid is an adult, their average working vocabulary is up to 50,000 words more than kids that are not read to.
Substantial difference.
And I think it's for 2 reasons. I think it develops a lifelong love of reading, and I can speak from firsthand on this because my mother read to me religiously from the time I was 1 till I started reading when I was 4, and you know, and look what's happened. I mean, I draw a straight line on this one. And then the other thing too, it's what an incredible bonding moment between parents and children, you know. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh gosh, yeah, Bob was going to ask me what my summer read was, which I don't know if you can actually consider it to be one, but what I'm currently reading right now is How to Think Like a Roman Emperor, the Stoic Philosophy of Marcus Aurelius. So I wanted to emphasize.
Are you considering that we're going to be your subjects?
No. That's what I'm getting at here. I wouldn't say any Roman emperor, considering you know how tyrannical some of them were. But as we all know, Marcus Aurelius was a really philosophical man. He engaged in Stoicism and has some wisdom in this book in particular that can be applied to today. And the author Donald Robertson does an excellent job because he takes a lot of the stories from Marcus Aurelius. Takes a lot of stories and philosophies that he has, and he kind of elaborates on them and really just expands on them in a way that can be applied to modern day. And honestly, in my opinion, that book in particular, I don't care what what your religion is, what your philosophy is. There's something that you can read in that book and take away from it. And
Right.
Marcus Aurelius' teaching. So, but yeah, through the title out there, I wanted to emphasize not just any Roman emperor, but
That's right, the best of them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So, it's a nice little self-help book, I suppose. But anyways.
Okay, so and now of course we'd like to chat with our producer for a few minutes and kind of put him on the spot and ask a few questions. You just
It's time. Let's get it.
So Trevor, you could tell us a bit of background on yourself, how you kind of got into the podcast world, I suppose, and maybe elaborate a bit on kind of your personal projects that you've done over the years and kind of what helped you build, become tech savvy, so to speak.
Right. Back in high school, I was always into just photography, like at the beach or something. But my coach, whenever I played basketball like in high school, he asked me like if I wanted to be to film the games. Because at the time in senior year, I not to get too deep like into this, but I hurt my shoulder bad, and my career I did have in basketball was over, and so I said, hey, I don't want to leave the team and my friends, but I do want to still be here. So what if I film the game? And so I'd go high up in the bleachers and point the camera down, and it was boring, to be honest, because I was literally just doing this for 2 hours straight. Pan back, and then I'm like, I get the experience is cool, but that job in and of itself was not the coolest. But just being able to capture and then seeing my team's faces like after after the fact of going, that was cool, I did that. That gave me like inspiration to be like, if this is how people feel seeing this on screen, I wonder if I could do the same thing with my interests. So when high school got out, me and my cousin, not you, but another cousin,
Yes.
she is a paranormal investigator like me, and we would actually go up to a cemetery that is relatively close, and we would just do short film after short film. Of course, not all of them made it out to the public, but after years and years of that, I realized that I want to make content, but not in I want to make content, but not take months to make a single short film. So then, years after years, I created a channel on YouTube, and 6 years later, I've gotten over 1,000 subs, and I actually have my own podcast now, but that's a different thing. And just, if I hadn't of had the accident in high school where I tore my shoulder,
you wouldn't have gotten into filming. The technical aspects of it.
I honestly don't think I would have touched a camera.
Well,
if I'm being totally honest, if I would have not hurt my shoulder, I would have kept up with basketball. I probably would have went to college for what my dad, my mom tried to put me into, and I would have been totally in a different place.
And Trevor's also filmed a lot of live shows. I might add, he's done some different concerts and things to that extent.
Her concerts.
Yeah, that one too.
But,
yeah, he's done that.
Yes.
And he's also worked for a pretty big news organization, Paxton Media. So he's done quite a bit over the years.
Indeed.
And he ended up getting involved with us, and
and once again, thanks to her. Thanks to you.
You're welcome. But yeah, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
So what are what are some of the things when we're doing the podcast and so forth? What are some of the things that you feel make podcasts really compelling and sticky?
But basically, one thing that I genuinely dislike about a lot of podcasts that are out there, which I was hoping that you didn't want to go down the same road, and you didn't, was a lot of podcasts out there have 1,000 transitions.
Yes.
A lot of lower thirds and titles. I'm like, if you're gonna put so much words on screen and visual effects on screen, it's not a podcast, it's a movie. And then that's when I after the first or second episode, I was like, conversational layout, and that's what happened. And then that's just where you can listen, you feel like you're at home. It's like your friends are talking to you about this information that you want to hear. And then that slowly turns, and then the more comfortable it is to listen to, the farther it'll go.
Absolutely.
And so, in the future, like, if this becomes, like, we're eventually going to be looking for sponsors and getting our name, like, out there, like, even more, going to conferences. And I don't want to be, like, cocky about it or get a big head,
okay.
but I kind of want to be the staple of a literary the podcast.
Well, that's our goal too. So,
because not only do I want to focus on podcasts, but we're going to be working on this soon and going to build up to even further. But shorts, vlogs, live streams,
Exactly.
like we're going to turn from a podcast to a media branch,
right?
And that's going to be awesome.
And fun fact too, Trevor also kind of helped influence our transition because we did film a few practice episodes beforehand, and we started out like with more of a talk show format. And then Trevor mentioned, make it more conversational, so it's kind of comfortable. And
like,
I think it's really done well. So
like
far.
a lot of
our guest also.
A lot of, I wouldn't say a lot, I can't name one specifically because to be honest, I'm busy. I don't have time to sit down for an hour and watch a lot of podcasts. But I've seen a lot in the past where they will literally, and I don't know this for a fact, like sent to me, but it's obvious that they have a script practiced in their head. They never look down like at a piece of paper once. They never reference anything. They know what they're going to say. They say it. They look like they're happy and in conversation, and then it ends. And it's scripted. Don't be afraid to look down like at a piece of paper and shuffle some papers around and go like, oh, so I forgot. Do you know what this is? And reference things. Like
branch off conversationally.
It's a conversation, not a talk show.
Yeah, and I want to digress slightly from that. And to writers that are getting ready to do live signings, this is a really good point. Because at a live signing, it's one you can sit there and you can read for 2 minutes and take questions, or you can read from 2 minutes and read from prepared notes, like you said. But that doesn't make the signing dramatic or dynamic. What makes the signing dynamic is when you routinely engage the audience. Like I know one of my pet peeves because I'm a multiple published poet as well.
Right.
One of my pet peeves of going to poetry readings is that the poets very often will not tell you any backstory of their poem. They just want it to be this misto thing.
Right.
And if you don't have any backstory context, then some of the metaphors and things they use, and some of the colorful language you just can't get. So I think, but if you sit there in your poetry reading or your regular reading, if you give a little backstory, tell us a little bit about what came into that book, or that story or that poem. If you do that, then it immediately engages the audience, and the chances of you selling your book just went up dramatically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's exactly the feel that we've wanted to bring to Front Page Pass that you've been able to convert for us as our producer.
Thank you.
And the other thing I wanted to say before we move on is I love some of the effects you're doing, but one thing that's just blowing me away is one of the things we do, of course, when we're getting ready to do to air an episode is we do a lot of social media prep. So with our show last week with Blood Money author Chris Rydell, I love that effect you did where you've got us on one screen, him on the other, the name of the book cover in the middle,
and the cool blue background, letters. It was really cool.
I mean, it says a lot about you as a producer, but it also speaks to how important it is to be able to be spontaneous and creative, even though you are working to a set format.
Yes. One thing I took inspiration from one of the podcasts that I still listen to the day is Can I say the name of the podcast that has no The Courage and Nade Shot Show. It's a gaming podcast, and their whole design is black in the background, and other than that, it's just scribbles. They're, like the graphics behind their cameras don't mean nothing. It's just scribbles. And then I'm like something that makes like no sense to their show makes their show look so good. So I'm like, what if I put something in the back of ours that's subtle, but actually makes sense? So I don't know which of you made the website for us, but if you go to the main site, how the letters are just like going in and out like in the background.
I designed the website.
I took that. I took the background from.
Cool.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and there's not really much. Like, it's a little. The graphical design of it, I wanted to make it pop, but not overburden, and I think I did a good job.
We loved
Yeah.
it. We loved it.
Thank you.
Stick with it, Trevor.
Well, thanks for giving us some of this insight.
It's no problem.
And obviously, you'll be chiming in the rest
Yeah.
of the show because you're going to sit with us, which is great. So,
Thank you.
and with that, thanks again, Trevor.
It's no problem at all.
It's really neat that we get to hear a little bit from you, and
Yeah.
so
We're thinking about doing that some more, also kind of behind the scenes.
Oh, yes, 'cause
talking
we-
to the
we-
rest of our team also.
That's
so
right.
We're expecting that.
yeah, expect that as the summer goes on.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so in our shop, we've been really busy.
I think that's an understatement.
Not only
Almost.
that, we're doing our own Herculean effort to add to the summer reading list.
Okay.
And so like right
Yeah.
now, for summer readers are just now getting their hands on Brandon Pilcher's book, Priestess of the Lost Colony, which is right here, and that's been out for a few weeks.
He was a recent guest on our podcast. He's an author and illustrator, and I helped him design the cover with his illustrations. It was an absolute blast, and he's such a joy to talk to. And his book in particular, it's a pretty adventurous tale set in ancient Greece and categorized as kind of an alternate history sort of thing, kind of what we were referencing earlier. So.
And I want to mention too that our podcast is available on 9 different platforms, and you can get past podcasts as well as on our website. The links are on our website.
Yep.
WordJourneysLiterary.com. So you can see some of these authors we're referencing we've already had on our show, so that people can go on and check out these podcasts. The other summer read, although it's not a read, it's an audiobook, is Blood Money. Chris Rydell, the book Blood Money, which was an Amazon bestseller last fall and winter, has just dropped as an audiobook, and it is fantastic. They got Chris has a Broadway actor doing the voiceover, doing the read, and it's just wonderful. And he even uses different accents for particular people that are in the book. I think he uses a Southern accent for an attorney, I believe that Chris said. That's
so
correct.
it's excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, and for those who saw last week's episode, the intro, the 3 or 4 minute intro that led into the main part of the show and the interview with Chris, well, that was part of the audiobook read.
And done by Ken Kibo, you should mention.
Yes, and that was all put together by Ken Kibo, who's a childhood friend of mine. He's a multiple Emmy Award-winning documentary producer, and we are extremely fortunate to be able to enlist his services for book trailers. Yeah. So.
But his book is excellent.
Yeah.
It really reads like a thriller about his heroine journey and everything.
And what is going to be a new announcement right now, we have just opened a Word Journeys publishing wing. And our first book is we're getting ready to drop Patrick O'Brien's fantastic memoir of his spiritual journeys and adventures in the 60s and 70s with the coolest title ever, The Adventures of Cosmic Lovejoy, EXP, and the EXP is for experience. And
expanding.
Expanding.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, well, expanding experience.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Same thing. Kind of.
Yeah.
And that book will be out the end of June. And it's a great read. I mean, if especially for people of a certain age like me, it really and even for younger readers, if you want to see what our society was like when it was really free, that's precisely the time period in which this book is set.
Younger people who are really just yearning to kind of find that sort of connection, the spiritual connections that he's talking about. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah, it's an excellent read.
And Patrick's just a really nice guy, and he's very friendly and engaging, and that shows up in his writing. It's a fantastic book, and we're so honored to be helping him on his publishing journey.
Absolutely.
Later in the summer, we're going to switch gears a lot, and we're going to be releasing businessman Prakash Bhaskar's fine debut, The Entrepreneur. Prakash has a long career as a systems engineer, and really he puts together teams all over the world for whatever the projects is, and he masterminds the teams, and he's the mastermind. And this book is for everyone who seeks to increase their value and performance within the companies they work. That's an entrepreneur. An entrepreneur is when you set out and start your own small business. An entrepreneur is using those exact same skills, but while being employed within a company. Exactly. And it's a talent and an asset unto itself. Yeah. And then And then as we move towards Labor Day, we're going to switch gears quite dramatically again. Get ready for quite the techie dystopian novel, Traceless, which is the first of several forthcoming books by Paul Brabowski, who's from Southern California, and we're just starting to work with Paul right now, and he's a fabulous guy with an incredible imagination, and this book kind of left our jaws dropping, to be honest.
I would say so.
Which is obviously what, if you're an author, that's what you want the reaction to be from your publisher. You want their jaw to drop, because then you know they're going to be emotionally and financially and otherwise engaged in the book, and they're going to help you make it as a writer. I
love that techie feel. Like, I don't know why, but just the title gave me a Tron vibe.
Yeah. Hashtag Traceless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. A very edgy book, somewhat dark, I would say. Some pretty dark elements. So it's definitely nail-biting. Read.
And finally, what is going to be an epic summer of 2021, when we all start getting depressed because it's coming to an end, the long-awaited sequel to my book, Rights of Life 2, is going to be published by Open Books Press. And that will be co-written by myself and also by Melissa Jenkins, who's our chief editor here at Word Journeys.
Exactly.
So, yay.
Hey, it's worth noting. It's
been a couple of years since I brought out one of my own books, so this will be really fun.
It's quite the accomplishment.
And speaking of your own book, we can say it again. Your voices in the Japanese accent, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
When we were the boys with Stevie.
Oh, not voices. I'm sorry.
When we were the boys, right.
Sorry,
yeah. Well, we just got that. I mean, in voices, I'll just share this because this is my all-time, one of my greatest signings. Voices came out 4 years ago last week, and the big launch signing though was in June, of course, summer, and it was at the Haight Street Fair in San Francisco. The book's set in Haight-Ashbury in the 60s. That's where it starts. So I went to the 50th anniversary fair, or it was the 40th anniversary of the Haight Street Fair, but it's 50-year anniversary of the Summer of Love. And there were 50,000 people there. There was another author there, Pamela Johnson, who has a great trilogy set entirely in the 60s and 70s. And so Pam, I was sitting there with all my books, and Pam came up to me and asked me if I would like to, share her booth with her, and I just blew through 3 boxes of books like that. It was, and plus to be able to launch a book, have your launch signing at the very place where the roots of the book are, it's just a really special, serendipitous thing. And
Stevie May, I just want to throw this out there. Stevie May end up being a guest also
Stevie
on here,
Salas,
and that also just kind of further illustrates the level of diversity that we have as far as people that are coming on the podcast is concerned. Because so far we have had quite a few. We've spanned the majority of genres, I would say.
And to our audience, I would say this is what happens when a bunch of writers get together and they get all stoked about summer and books at the same time. It's pretty free for all.
Yes, it does.
Okay, so now that we've talked about our shop, Alexa, I believe you have some things you want to talk about.
Yeah, just a little bit, because every now and then on this podcast we tend to read quotes, and I know on Instagram we do post quite a few quotes pretty frequently from prolific authors that can really resonate, whether you are a seasoned author yourself or an aspiring one. So one quote that I did run across the other day that really resonated with me is by Dominic Dunn, and it is, "The best advice on writing was given to me by my first editor, Michael Korda, Simon & Schuster, very lucky there, while writing my first book. Finish your first draft and then we'll talk," he said. "It took me a long time to realize how good the advice was. But even if you write it wrong, write and finish your first draft. Only then, when you have a flawed hole, you know what you have to fix." And that is a quote that just really resonated with me, because when I was younger, starting out, and we're talking years and years ago, because I've had 2 books published, and I'm in the process of publishing another, which is, medieval fantasy. The other 2 were nonfiction. But like I said, just to stress that when I was younger, in particular, I did have trouble doing that, where I would obsess over a chapter. I would write a chapter, obviously have the plot lined out and everything. And I feel like a lot of writers, especially just starting out, do have that trouble, where they'll go back, they'll write a chapter, then they sit there and get stuck on it and obsess over the one chapter and go back and edit it and tweak this and tweak that. Yeah. And really, I feel like this is a quote in particular, like I said, that I ran across, recently, and it's one that I ran across years ago that actually kind of inspired me to just push forward and go through and write that entire manuscript, even if you're not satisfied with it. Take that first step, and that first step is the big one, is write the manuscript, write the entire thing, go back and edit it, and flesh out every detail. You may end up changing a lot of things. Don't completely marry yourself to what you end up with, but that's just of vast importance. I feel like that's what keeps a lot of what would otherwise be great and monumental stories from even being read or being finished, much less being read. So that's just something I wanted to throw out there that I feel like probably a lot of aspiring authors, especially friends of mine that I've known in my literary circles, are still dealing with today, and just kind of have to crack a whip and say, finish the manuscripts, and then go from there. So well,
that's where a lot of writing dreams and story dreams go to die, is in first draft. And the reason 100%. Why, like you said, is the writers don't finish them.
Exactly.
We write a chapter and we get caught up in editing. And I tell everybody that I work with, write the first draft.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean,
even if you don't like
Stephen King, Stephen King calls them shitty first drafts. Anne Lamott says you'd never let it leave the closet. No. And these are best-selling especially Stephen King, but Anne Lamott too. These are great authors. And the point is, the whole point of a first draft is this story is living in your head, and it's dying to be told. And it's never going to be told if you don't stick it down on paper.
Make progress, then worry about perfecting it.
Yeah, and then because really when the first draft, for me personally, I love writing first draft because then I feel like a kid playing in the sandbox again. It's playtime. It's total playtime. You can go off in any tangent you want. It doesn't matter as long as you just get everything down on paper. Once it's down on paper, then worry about how shaping it, sculpting it, editing it, making it into its final form.
Yeah, then you can worry about the plot points, character arcs, so forth. Everything you have in mind, flesh it all out.
And that's the same way
worry about structuring it
with a video. Like, I may be weird on how I do my stuff, but with the short films that I made in my past, I will write down a list of shots in which I will tell a story with. But then when I had the whole list, like in my head, the self-doubt hits. I'm like, this don't look good, but that's on paper. I will go out to the location and film random shots. And I have no idea what the end game will be. I'll get home, edit those random shots, and once I see it on screen, I'll be like, those two can turn into that, and this can turn into that, and once those two get put together at the end,
perfect story.
Yeah, like
that's interesting.
On paper, it's nothing. Like it's you got to see it in person, and it helps.
That makes total sense, Trevor. So
yeah, so the point is, get the whole draft down.
Yes,
because once you get the draft down, the chances of it. Well, I'll put it to you this way: if you have this great story in your head, and you sit there and struggle or keep going over and over chapters and you never get the end of the first draft done, the chances of that book becoming published are absolutely zero. Zero, because you never wrote the first draft.
True, true.
Right. So
it's not often, unless it's nonfiction at times, it's not often that you can bring an unfinished manuscript to
right.
So right. But I also wanted to emphasize that Bob and I write on a blog pretty frequently, especially Bob does, but like I said, you guys need to end up following us on social media because we do post a lot of tips, tricks, and everything like that. So Bob wrote a pretty compelling blog that I wanted to share a few things from, if you don't mind, and you can kind of elaborate on them. It was I believe the title of it was writing goals of 2021. I think you have to go on there and look, and I would recommend checking it out at bobyelling.wordpress.com. So these are just a few goals that I kind of wanted to impart with everybody that Bob wrote. So filling your writing space with things that inspire you, sayings, music, paintings, book, special trinkets, and a fountain or a Zen garden. I really do feel like your writing space has a whole lot to do with it.
And I think we can. I think we can give everybody a visual example. Our studio set.
Yeah,
that's exactly what she's talking about.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Start each writing session with 10 minutes of journaling at full speed. Don't worry about punctuation, grammar, run-on, or fragmented sentences. Just write. It's like warming up a car engine in winter. When your 10 minutes is up, switch to your computer. Presto. No writer's block. You'll be ready to go. I really like that analogy, so I had to share that one.
It works.
Yeah, it does work. And then another one, write fluidly and freely, resisting all temptation to edit sentences along the way, which kind of has to do with what we were just talking about. You can do that later. Only review sentences to see what comes next. So I'm not going to read all of them. You guys need to go in there and check it out. kind of a bit of a teaser there.
Thank
so,
you.
Yeah. But like I said, just to further emphasize, keep up with us and chock full of information.
And speaking of that, one of our main sites for our podcast on Anchor.com, they now have an integration to where you can do a WordPress account built in to our podcast site. So maybe in the next week or two, a couple of days, we can integrate that into our podcast.
That's a great idea.
Yeah. That would be a good idea.
Yeah.
So, well, that's all I have.
Okay.
So.
Well, this show keeps moving right along. So we're almost, believe it or not. I mean, all right. Well, we've just been given a signal by our producer for the day, Aaron James, that we're almost out of time, which is really hard to believe because I feel like we started 5 minutes ago. But that's what happens when you get writers in a room talking about writing, especially when you bring in a creative producer.
Time flies.
Yeah. So anyways, we'd like to close the show as we always do with our chart toppers, the top 5 combined print and ebook selling fiction and nonfiction books as posted on the New York Times.
Okay, so I will read the combined print and ebook nonfiction. Number 1 is the Anthropocene review by John Green, it's new this week. Number 2 is Zero Fail by Carol Lanning, new this week also. Number 3 is Killing the Mom by Bill O'Reilly and Martin Dugard, 3 weeks on the list. Number 4 is Noise by Daniel Kahneman and Oliver Savani and Cass R. Sunstein. I may have butchered the pronunciation there, and I do apologize. Number 5 is What Happened to You by Bruce D. Perry and Oprah Winfrey. 4 weeks on the list currently, and that is a really excellent book that I would highly recommend checking out that I've just seen thus far. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the on the fiction list, I mean, these are great books. I'm just like, wow. Number 1, The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. It's 3 weeks on the list, and this book, this is one of those books where you're gonna be sitting there with your mouth open when you get done with it. It's that good. It's amazing, and very emotional. Number 2 is Sully by John Grisham, and the great legal thriller writer.
Excellent.
Number 3 is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, who's the author of The Martian.
Mm-hmm.
So this is his first big book since The Martian, and it's written typical Andy Weir style. It's really good. It's technical.
It is excellent.
Yeah.
Is that the same as the movie that came out a couple years ago?
Yes, that's
okay.
The Martian. Yeah,
Gotcha.
That starred Matt Damon, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Number 4, and this always seems to show up in summertime, Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This is one of the greatest books ever about the South.
Mm-hmm.
I believe. I feel like Delia could have easily belonged in the same 100 years ago with William Faulkner and.
It does feel very authentic.
Yeah,
100%.
and Carson McCullers and that whole group. She's that high level.
Yeah.
This book has been on the list now for 2.5 years, 131 weeks.
Quite good. No?
The number 5 is 21st Birthday, the newest book by James Patterson, who's writing along with Maxine Pietro, and that's been on the list for 3 weeks.
Yep. So. Anyways, well, thank you guys for joining us on Front Page Pass, brought to you by Word Journeys, if you didn't know that already. So we hope to see you guys next time, and this is a blast. I really enjoyed it. So.
And before we go, we want to talk about our next week's guest because she's a special one, Dr. Gail Nadelaine Randall. She's the author of Soul Doctoring, which is in the process of being published. And Dr. Randall is, she's a medical futurist and a visionary. Mm-hmm. And absolutely. She's been on top of, the whole big thing right now is integrative medicine, plant-based eating, et cetera, and stuff. She was doing that 40 years ago. In fact, she was part of the very first integrative medicine facility in the United States that was held at UCLA Medical Center. She's fascinating, a great storyteller, and
a joy to be around as well.
A joy to be around, and her wisdom is really unparalleled. I've had the pleasure of knowing her in many roles. I mean, friend, physician, mentor. I've been her writing coach. In fact, I worked heavily on Soul Doctoring, but I've known her for over 20 years. We're looking forward to a fabulous conversation with her. And I might add, she has a great podcast called Soul Stories. And then every Friday night, she's on Instagram TV. At 6 o'clock Pacific time.
And she really has priceless wisdom. And she, years and years ago, before a lot of the holistic approach and just things that she studies now that people, turn to avidly. She was preaching about and talking about back then when people just turned their nose up at it, and now they're like, oh, well, it turns out it really works.
And then 2 other guests I'll tell you about that are coming in the future are the lady I mentioned at the very beginning of the show, 10-time Amazon #1 best-selling children's book author, Sherry Fink Kent, and her husband, Derek Kent, who's a YA best-selling author. I mean, this is a husband and wife team that I can tell you right now, when they go to the LA Times Festival of Books, where 150,000 people are over 2 days, their booth is absolutely always one of the most crowded. And they're amazing. They're amazing, and we're going to have them on. I'm not quite sure when, but they're going to be on in the future. Also coming in June is award-winning memoirist David Reed, who was published by Acorn Books, like Chris Rydell was. And I had the pleasure of helping David years ago with early iteration of his memoir. And it's a great book, and it's going to be awesome to talk to David again, because it's been a while for me. So anyways, that's what's coming up on Front Page Pass.
All right, thank you guys. Now I will officially send you all off.
And don't forget to like and subscribe,
of course,
and everything else like that.
Well, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Have a good day, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us at Front Page Pass, where we present everything from new titles to rocking interviews with best-selling authors and publishing experts, writing and editing tips, the latest on the bookshelves for readers, and live coverage of writers' festivals, conferences, and author signings. Our mission: to serve up the world in a thrilling, wonderful, and most adventurous new way.